So again, we'll get started this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is a presentation on the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering here at the University of Toronto. And I'm very excited to speak with you about engineering today. Again, just a few housekeeping notes. We do ask that you hold off until the presentation has completed to submit questions. The reality is we'll probably be able to answer all the questions that you have through the presentation. And then of course, at the end, if you do have any other questions, at that point, we will invite you to submit questions, and then we'll ask Helen to shed some light on some of the questions that you do have. In addition to that, throughout the presentation, you will see white circles as you do on this screen right now, with URLs that start with ufteng.ca. They are links that provide you with detailed information to our websites. Don't worry if you don't catch all of these URLs. You will be provided with a link to our engineering viewbook that you can access and download on our website as well. So first off, let's talk a little bit about our faculty. So we were founded in 1873, and we have over 147 years of innovation and impact under our belt. In addition to that, we are amongst one of the most tightly knit and diverse communities on campus. We have about 5,000 undergraduate students, and our first year class is made up of roughly 1,200 students. What this means is that about 40% of our first year students are female, which is the highest proportion of female students in first year in any other university engineering school in Canada. We also have representation from over 100 different countries from around the world, which means you get to study with students from all over the world. We have over 86% of our first year class that speak more than one language, and we have nearly 70 different languages represented. So for all this and more, U of T Engineering continues to be recognized as the #1 engineering school in Canada and consistently ranks amongst the best engineering schools worldwide. Now, I do want to take some time and talk a little bit about our academic options that there are for you as you begin to consider engineering as an option to apply to. So while we do offer 10 academic programs in total, it's easiest to think of there being 2 curricular pathways into engineering. The first one is what we call our core programs, and the other is engineering science. So let's take a look at pathway 1, which is the core programs, which represents a more traditional area of engineering study. So each of our 8 core programs has a strong focus on design and includes several options to specialize in, which I'll talk about in a moment. So if you know you want to study one of these 8 areas like chemical, electrical, industrial, or so forth, you can actually apply into these programs directly into first year. Now, for those students who are unsure of what you want to study, we do have an option for you, which is our Track 1 Undeclared option, which allows you to explore your options in first year, and then you declare your program of choice for second and third and fourth year of one of the core 8 programs. So you could think of the Track 1 program kind of like an undeclared first year, where you take the same first year courses as the students in core 8, but you don't actually declare your focus until the end of the first year. The second pathway into U of T engineering is called engineering science. This is an academically rigorous program and one of the very few of its kind in the world. The structure of the program is also unique in that the first 2 are foundational and the last 2 years allow for specialization in one of our 8 majors. These majors include anywhere from machine intelligence to aerospace to biomedical, and the decision on what majors that we offer are primarily informed by future trends and advances in technology. Now, going back to the other topic that I mentioned of students in the core 8 program being able to specialize. So within each of the programs, there are specializations where you focus in on your interest. I'm going to use materials engineering as an example here. There are 4 different areas of focus. So once a materials engineering student is in second year, It essentially means that you get to take a selection of courses within this program that allows you to develop a certain level of expertise in one of these areas. I will get my colleague Tyler to link our Discover website so that you can actually explore and see all the list of focuses that exist in all the engineering programs. Just because I'm using this one program as an example, but it'll allow you to browse the other options at a later point. Now, another way to customize your academic experience is through our 21 engineering minors and certificates. This list here is just a small sample, and these programs draw upon our expertise at U of T Engineering and are often areas that are not readily available elsewhere in Canada. For example, our forensic engineering certificate. And a fun fact is that more than half of our undergraduate students graduate with at least one engineering minor. And this is really a neat way to complement your academic area of interest. So this idea of learning by doing is a central pillar to what U of T engineering education is all about. So regardless of what specific academic of area study you choose to focus on, we create a range of unique experiential opportunities for you to enhance your technical and professional skills. These are just a few examples of ways that you can get involved, anywhere from our engineering leadership and entrepreneurship to our co-op program and summer research opportunities. Let's take a closer look at our professional experience co-op program, or PY co-op for short, which is our flagship work experience program. When you apply to U of T Engineering, you'll be asked about your interest in this optional program. If you do opt in, you can expect to start your professional development right in first year, giving you lots of lead time to explore and understand your career interests. Throughout PY co-op, you can participate in 2 work terms. There's an optional 4-month summer position after second year and a 12 to 16-month work position after third year. So as I mentioned, this would allow you to gain up to 20 months of work experience. And we do have access to over 1,900 job opportunities across every sector around the world. And last year, students earned on average 12-month salary of $51,000 with higher earning potentials for longer duration of work. Now, another way is through experiential learning is our robust summer research opportunities. So if you're looking to focus your energy on research opportunities, we do have over 300 undergraduate students engaged in summer research each year. So beyond our campus opportunities, we also do partner with universities around the world. So even this past year, during the pandemic, while many things were closed, our students were actually still able to continue to contribute to ongoing engineering research virtually, and really all over the world. Oh, sorry, I clicked a bit too quickly. Perfect. So now, of course, we all know that university is much more than the academics and the research. So let's just take a little bit more about what else it is about here at U of T Engineering. So the interests and passions and backgrounds of our students are seen in numerous clubs and teams that they lead within engineering. So whether they're designing a solar car to race across the Australian outback or designing a suspension bridge made of gingerbread, our students support and lean on one another as they develop into young professionals. Additionally, support and student success is a theme that runs deeply within our community. In addition to dedicated first-year office team who support first-year students transition to university, we also have a range of specialized advisors. Engineering students also benefit from services developed specifically for them, from our Engineering Career Center to our Engineering Communications program. This investment in student success has translated into an exceptional retention rate, with 95% of our engineering students transitioning from first to second year. Now, I do want to switch gears one last time and talk a little bit about our admissions process, which I know might seem a little bit a time away. For those that are in grade 11, I know it will be happening this fall. For those of you that are in 9th or 10th grade, this is definitely a great informative presentation to see how you can start preparing your application in a few years. So this diagram here is, it represents our admissions process to U of T Engineering. And really it all begins with submitting your application on the Ontario University Application Center, OUAC for short. And typically students would submit their OUAC application by the latest, it would be mid-January. And then typically we do also have early application deadline dates, and that can range anywhere from November to December. Obviously that's going to vary every year. So definitely if you're a grade 11, keep an eye out for emails from U of T to make sure you know when our deadline dates are. Next step would be is that you'll get an email from us where we acknowledge you to access the engineering applicant portal. This is the main way for our admissions committee to let you know about progress of your application. It's a way we communicate with you if there's anything missing. So again, this is very unique to engineering. It's also how you'll access your online student profile, which I'll tell you about more in a minute. But this is also, again, very critical as an engineering applicant. And this is typically due February 1st, but again, we'll have early consideration dates you'll want to complete by sometime in December or November, depending if you're in Ontario, out of province or international student, those dates might vary. But again, if you're in grade 11, keep an eye out for your email as we will be engaging with you in the summer, early fall to let you know when those dates are. Now, the next step would be also is to complete the awards profile by February 1st. There are many scholarships and awards that you will automatically be considered for, but we do also have an awards profile that allows you to look at all the other options and other scholarships that we might have, where you might have to submit a little bit more information about yourself. Next is also completing the residence profile by March 31st. And then in addition to that, we start releasing offers of decision anywhere from February all the way into May, again, just depending where you're applying from. And then typically acceptance dates where you have to respond back to us would typically be May 1st for non-Ontario students, so students from out of province or international students, or June 1st for Ontario students. Again, no need to memorize these dates. We'll be definitely in touch with you about these, but this is just an overview of what our admissions process looks like. So now let's dive a little bit further into this and break apart some components of it. I talked about that there's a key part of the engineering admissions process called the online student profile. Again, this is an important and mandatory part of your application. We know that grades alone don't tell the whole picture of what makes you a great candidate to U of T Engineering. And that's why we've created this profile for you to articulate your interest, your strengths, and tell us about what you hope to achieve. This is also where you'll be asked to select your engineering programs and indicate your interest in PY co-op as well. So next, let's take a little bit of a closer look. Another key component of the engineering, of the online student profile is your extracurricular involvement. So part of the application, we're going to ask you to reflect and comment on how you've been engaged and involved in your school. This could be anywhere from sports, clubs, student governance, music, art, work experience. Really, we'd like to see you reflect on how you've been engaged outside of your classroom. Provide us your involvement and reflect on the skills that you have gained. And then, of course, you do have to provide a reference for each of the activity. And we do use this information for both admissions and scholarship consideration. Now, the last part of the online student profile that's also very critical is the personal profile. So again, this takes about 30 minutes to complete, and it's embedded in a part of the online student profile. You'll have the opportunity to do practice options, but it is a timed session. So once you click begin, you're going to start your 30-minute session, and you're going to be responding to 3 questions, 2 brief video responses, and 1 timed written response. And there's no specific preparation required. They are technically oriented questions, but no right or wrong answer, but rather we want to see the approach that you take, your problem solving and communication skills as well. Again, I like to say it's almost like a mini interview, because you have the time to practice within the system, and then once you are ready to go, you click begin, and then from start to finish, as I said, it's about 30 minutes. So next, how do we assess our applicants is something that we get asked quite often, right? How does this all come together? The extracurricular involvement, the personal profile, the academics. So we do something called broad-based admissions here at U of T Engineering. So again, just highlighted here, we look at your academic performance, your extracurricular involvement, and your personal profile, which is the 3 questions that you answer. So it's more than just your grades. It really allows us to consider all of your achievements. And again, you are applying to a professional program. So successful engineers we'll have skills beyond those that are learned in the classroom. We are looking for depth and breadth. And then something new that we implemented this year was a question that has asked students to reflect on how your activities were impacted by COVID-19. Not 100% sure if this will be on our admissions process again next year, but it could very likely be the case that will be a question that is asked again of our applicants this coming cycle, as well as COVID and the pandemic has and continues to impact many of our applicants. Now, academic factors. So we are going to be looking at averages calculated based on required courses. We're going to be looking at consistent academic performance through your grade 11 and grade 12. And ideally, we would like to see first attempt at a subject. And we do accept any course taken at a school recognized by the Ministry of Education, but we do encourage you to take courses at your home institute where possible. As for academic requirements, here is a general academic requirement. We do look at chemistry, English, math, and physics. For the math specifically, of course, calculus would be required. For those students here today from Ontario, for you, that would be advanced functions as well as the calculus course. So really, it doesn't matter what curriculum you're studying from. These courses right here will be required for all programs from any educational curriculum that you are studying from. I will ask my colleague Tyler to link the ufteng.ca/apply link for you, so you can actually look up your specific curriculum and to check what prerequisites will be asked of you. But again, more or less, it will be these 4 critical courses here. Again, for the math, we would need to see some component of calculus as well. And then last but not least, I did want to mention English language facility. So if English isn't your first language, then you will need to provide proof of English facility. This is a part of the admissions process, and you will need to satisfy the English requirement in order to be considered for admissions. The good news is that there are several ways to meet this requirement, and here are just a few common tests and qualifications we receive. And I bring this up because I know we have lots of students that have maybe not been studying in Canada for more than 4 years. So then you would need to provide an English facility. Again, this is available online, so I'll get my colleague Tyler to perhaps link our English facility requirements as well, so that you can review at a later time. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Again, I will get my colleague Tyler to link U of T Ench .ca/discover. You'll be able to access and download our view book, book a student-led virtual tour, review and watch videos and profiles that we have online. We also encourage you to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And then last but not least, as you continue to explore what options that are out there for you and programs you might apply to, if you do ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at engineering@utoronto.ca. So I will leave that up there for you for a minute, and my colleague Tyler will also link that for you guys in the chat. So that does bring me to the end of my presentation. So I am going to stop sharing, and I will invite my colleague Helen to join me. And I see we have a few questions that have come in, so we'll go through them. And Helen, I can ask the questions, and then we'll try to answer them to the best of our abilities. So first question from a student asking, good evening, are the minors in engineering available only when you are doing Core 8 programs or in Eng Sci 2? So I can take this one, Helen. So that's a great question. So you can still do a minor if you're an engineering science student. But the reality is it might make your scheduling a little bit more challenging, given that students within engineering science do have a heavier course load, but it is definitely doable. Maybe one minor, perhaps, and not two that might be available to Core 8 programs. Perfect. Question regarding if the slides will be available for us. Yes, we are recording this session, so the slides will be available as well. Next question is, will taking grade 11 academic English during summer school be a negative on my application? So Helen, maybe I'll allow you to take this one.
So as Ingrid did mention, we do encourage you to take the prerequisite courses within your regular school where possible, but we realize that sometimes scheduling makes that challenging. So what will happen if you choose to take a course in summer school is that we maybe just look a little bit more closely to make sure that your performance is consistent across. So if it's something that you're generally doing well, you take a summer school course and you do well, it won't have an impact at all. What I would say is when you're choosing where to take the course, I would encourage you to stay within your school board rather than maybe signing up at a private academy where you're not necessarily sure of the consistency of the course that's available.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Helen. So another student asking, if we are doing IB, would we have to take math HL, or is it only recommended? It's a great question.
So we accept all of the math courses, but students who take the higher level math may be at a slight advantage when it comes to admissions, particularly if you do well. And also it will give you a little bit of an advantage once you're in the program to have covered some of that content, perhaps a little bit more than our other students do.
Absolutely. So another one, and Helen, it's a broad question. Does grade 11 matter? So I'll let you take that question as you'd like.
Absolutely. So when we're considering your application, we're looking at both grade 11 and grade 12 subjects, particularly as we start to make decisions earlier each year. So when we're making decisions in February, for example, usually we don't have very many grade 12 courses upon which to base our decisions. So we would there be looking very closely at your grade 11 results. But even as we progress through the year and we're looking at May grades where we may have grades for all of your grade 12 courses, we would still look to see how you did in grade 11, to see that your performance was consistent, because we really do believe that students succeed more when they have prepared themselves with a good foundation and not maybe just crammed really hard to do well in grade 12, but have consistently been strong throughout their high school studies.
Absolutely. So Helen, another question from Isaac is, what is the usual acceptance rate for civil engineering? Maybe we can talk about just maybe general acceptance or.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it does vary a little bit from year to year, depending on the number of applicants that we have for a particular program. Faculty-wide, we typically receive about 13,000 applications per year, and our first year class is about 1,200 students. So in terms of, 1 in 10 of the students that apply will ultimately end up registered in our faculty. Of course, some number more than that will get admitted because not everybody who we make an offer to will decide to come to U of T engineering. So it's difficult to say. What we would say is if your average is in, the high 80s, so we'd certainly encourage an application to any of our programs, and really, mid 80s and above for grade 11, aiming for above that in grade 12. And then it's all those other factors as well that Ingrid discussed. So extracurricular involvement and how you perform on your personal profile.
Absolutely. Next question is, how can I get a scholarship? So if maybe you can generally comment on scholarship opportunities, Helen.
So all students are automatically considered for scholarships, both based on their grades in their courses and also based on the information you provide on your online student profile. There will also be an opportunity once you apply to submit something called an awards profile, which puts you in contention for university-wide scholarships that have non-academic components. So looking at extracurriculars, looking at things like financial aid. And don't worry, there's nothing you need to know now. Once you've applied, we will certainly make sure that you're aware of all of the opportunities you have to apply for scholarships. But as I mentioned, most of them are automatic based on your grades and other information you put on your profile.
Great, and I'll get my colleague Tyler to link our scholarship page as well on our website, because I know, again, it's going to vary from student to student too, so you can just visit that website and see which one might be more appropriate for the applicant. So great question. Are you guaranteed your major if you take track 1 engineering? So happy to take this one, Helen. The answer is yes. You do have to have be in good academic standings in both your first and second semester of first year to then move into second year. And then at that point, it's whichever program that you wish to go into within the Core 8 program. So it is guaranteed to some degree. And again, to the being in good academic standings in first semester and second semester, you're looking at about 60% average in each term. So the next question we have is from a student. For the French bac curriculum, what is the average required for the majority subject, the mandatory subjects, math, English, physics, chem, and what is the expected generic average?
So our minimum requirements, typically we would be looking at around a 14 and above for students coming from the French bac system. And depending on the program you're interested in, it may be more, it may be higher. And again, looking at all of the other information you provide as well.
Yeah, and we can, we'll link for that French bac student. My colleague Tyler can link directly the French bac requirements for you as well from our website. So Helen, we have a BC student who's currently in a quarter system. If I were to have AP Calculus in 3rd or 4th quarter, which takes place after post-secondary applications, how will this factor into my admissions at U of T? Right.
So typically, choosing to take an AP Calculus or an IB Math or something that's a little bit advanced beyond the general curriculum, we certainly encourage students to stretch themselves where they can. In terms of admissions consideration, whether it's an AP or whether it's the BC calculus course, they will be treated the same way. If you don't yet have the result, or at the time when we're considering your application, you don't have the result, what we would do is look to your prior math courses to judge your performance overall. And we may wait until later on if we are not able to make a decision, but most students will make decisions based on either grade 12 pre-calculus or grade 11 math.
Great. So another student is asking if we could elaborate a little bit more about the professional skills outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, as an engineer, it's very important. Obviously, communication skills are incredibly important because you will be working with others, describing technical ideas, sometimes to a technical market and sometimes not. Teamwork is incredibly important because engineers, really never work alone. So all of those skills that you build by being involved in extracurricular activities are really, really important in addition to the academic foundation that you need to be successful in our program.
Great. Another question from a gentleman named James. Hi, are grades for, I wonder if I think IELTS exam mandatory if we can provide grades for 4 years of regular level English course?
So if you have been enrolled for 4 years in an education system in the country where the predominant language is English, then you're not required to provide IELTS. But if it has been less than 4 years of full-time study, then you would be required to provide IELTS. And it's not so much tied to how many English courses you've taken as compared with full-time study in an English language institution in an English language country.
Great, thanks, Helen. I could take the next one. So it's what requirements are needed for co-op, and when is the earliest time to start the co-op experience? So Navin, I had mentioned in the presentation, so for the co-op experience, a part of the engineering applicant portal, you will select, there'll be a yes or no question if you would like to opt into co-op. If you do select yes, we will start engaging with you in first year in professional development programming. So that's your year 1, and then there will be certain modules that begin in year 2. And then after your second year is during the summer months for 4 months, you have the optional work experience. And then you'd come back for your third year, academic year after that summer. And then after third year, you'd go away for 12 to 16 months to complete your co-op experience. And then you'd come back after that 12 to 16 months to complete your last and final year. So again, all of this would take 5 years to complete your degree with a 20-month co-op experience. Next question is, good evening. For students from the United States, are there some required AP courses?
So for students from the US, our requirement is that you must have 2 years of chemistry, physics, and math, including calculus. So if your school offers that in your curriculum, then it's not required that you take your APs, but we do recommend APs if they are available to you. It does provide good preparation, but it isn't mandatory. But when we're reviewing your application, we will, in addition to making sure that you've met the basic prerequisites, we will look at the academic rigor of your program when making our decisions.
Absolutely. So very good question. Coming up next is for IB students, and maybe Helen, maybe we could just talk about which IB math do we accept and which we don't. I can also link it here as well.
So for the math, if you are currently in grade 11, I can confirm these will be the same for next year. We are reviewing the math requirements as they are new. So right now, and I'm forgetting the names of the math.
I have it up if you want.
Okay.
Helen. Yeah.
We accept both of the
analysis and approaches.
Both higher level courses and then the standard level of analysis and approaches.
Yes. Great. And then I will link this for IB students, so because that's a very good question. I know it's too many A's, and when I saw the student write AA, I mean, almost all of them end with the AA, right? So we will link that for you. So thank you very much for the presentation. My question is about English requirement in the IB system. As last year IB updated its curriculum, new English SL subjects has appeared named literature and performance. Is doing this subject enough to proof of English language knowledge, or do you need to pass some additional testing?
I will confess I am not familiar with that particular English course off the top of my head. There have been so many changes this past year. So if we could link to the website for English language requirements, then that will make sure you get the right information. It is possible that a determination hasn't been made yet if that exam hasn't yet been offered. As sometimes when changes are in flux, we make decisions kind of as we're proceeding. If you have been for 4 years in an IB school, however, studying in English, then that will also meet our requirements if it is an English speaking school certified by the IBO and you've been there for 4 years.
Great. This is another great question, Helen. is if an applicant chooses to take grade 12 courses in grade 11, will it be seen negatively?
Not at all. One thing I just, always want to encourage students to make sure they have the appropriate preparation to take a course before they do so. We do see sometimes students stretch ahead with their courses and then their performance suffers. But if you have all of the prerequisite courses, it won't hurt at all.
Great. I think we had already commented on this, but maybe Helen, you can just comment on the competitive averages. This student's particularly interested in the Track 1 program.
Yeah, so Track 1, because of it is a gateway to any of our programs except for engineering science, does tend to be quite competitive. It has to have almost the highest threshold of the core 8 programs because we need to be confident a student would have gained admission to any of our programs. At a minimum, we're looking probably at low 90s, but we're also very much focused on the non-academic factors. So all of the information you put on your online student profile with regards to extracurriculars, I would say perhaps even more so than some of our other programs, that is really scrutinized for that program. Again, because we need to have confidence that students would have gained admission to any of our programs directly.
Absolutely. So this is a very specific question, Helen. A student started studying in Canada in September of 2018, but they arrived a few days after the semester started. Do we think they would still need to take the English language test to prove English facility?
That should be fine. Usually there is a date that we set as the cutoff for Ontario students or out of province students. It usually falls in October. So essentially, as long as you're able to finish that semester in full, you should be okay.
In a few days, I feel like that's where we would allow that. Maybe not months, but a few days. Exactly. So it's a great question. Is with the COVID-19 disruptions be taken into account when assessing extracurriculars? Excellent question.
Yes, absolutely. So we do understand that students, particularly those who are participating maybe in sports or music, where it's really been dialed back because it's kind of hard to meet virtually. We understand that there have been changes. What we will ask you on your profile, I think as Ingrid alluded to beforehand, is really reflect on how your plans changed. What we're seeing this year with the students that are currently applying is that often they were competing in something up to grade 11, and then as of March of last year, it dialed back. But what we would still like to see you get engaged. There are opportunities for online engagement, and we encourage you to participate where you can. It's certainly more challenging being virtual, but we do expect you to still develop those skills that are so important to success in our program.
Absolutely. All right, so the next one is for extracurricular involvement. Do you prefer if it's school involvement, or can all our extracurriculars be outside of school? For example, organizations and clubs outside of school, school and community involvement. Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So really it's whatever your passions and interests are. So we're not necessarily looking that you get involved in school. Obviously, we tend to see students do get involved in their school community, but many of our students either are pursuing hobbies outside of school, or they have part-time jobs, which is also an important, consideration for extracurricular involvement, or they're volunteering in their communities. And that's all great. It's really about what you've done to grow outside of the classroom.
And Helen, I've just been kind of looking here, and it looks like we have many questions related to AP courses, if they're required to be accepted into engineering programs. Does it affect our applications? Is there an advantage? So I think there's a lot of students very keen to learn about a little bit more about that.
Right. So we certainly don't require AP courses. There was the question earlier about US students. So if you are in a US curriculum, this particular answer might not apply to you. But if you're in a Canadian school, certainly AP courses may give you that challenge that is very good preparation for an engineering program, but it is not a requirement, and we don't give preference to students who have done the APs specifically. We do give students the opportunity on their profile to explain to us any particularly challenging programs they've done, any courses they've taken that are perhaps beyond the requirements of the curriculum. but it is taken holistically as part of our, when we're reviewing your application. The vast majority of students coming from Ontario and Canadian high schools have not taken AP courses, and they are, those that are successful have not taken AP courses, but of course we do have quite a number of students that have as well. So when it comes to either AP or IB within the Canadian context, it's really just about what you think is the best curriculum for you personally. There's not any one specific curriculum that I would say will help you get into U of T engineering. We're comparing you to your peers and based on your own accomplishments.
Right. And another great question we have is do we give equal consideration to both virtual and in-class courses due to COVID-19?
Yes, so historically we've maybe discouraged students from taking online courses, but certainly with the pivot to online learning because of COVID, we understand for some students that wasn't a choice at all, and we will consider both equally. Again, where possible, we encourage you to stay within your school board so that we can kind of fairly compare your record consistently across your final years of high school. But you'll need to make the choices you need to make in terms of fitting things into your schedule and things like that. But certainly online courses have been normal for the past year, and it won't hurt your application at all.
So, and actually this is a great segue into our next question, Helen, is has grade inflation from online schools affected the admissions process? Has there been grade inflation, right, pertaining to that?
I mean, it is very difficult to tease out right now whether there's specifically grade inflation or students who maybe have less distractions or maybe putting a little bit more time into their studies. We have tended to see that the grades are maybe a little bit higher, but again, because you're all in the boat together, if the grades all rise by 1%, for example, roughly what we're seeing right now is equal across the school boards and across the area. So there's not an area of concern. Ultimately, you're being compared to students who have also been impacted by COVID. So just, you're never being compared to the previous year's class or the future year's class. You're being compared with your cohort.
Absolutely. That's a very good way of putting it. So this is another question. I was wondering if taking AP courses adds anything to an applicant's admission average, or if it is taken into consideration differently in your application. So I think we already answered that question for the most part. So we can go to the next one. What is the general admissions average and admissions rate into engineering? I know we've kind of gone over that, Helen. I don't know if you want to maybe just high level touch on that again.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to say a rate because it will vary from year to year. But what I would say is students, starting in the high 80s, we encourage you to apply. Our incoming class, typically the average grade of the incoming class is typically in the 94, 95 area. That's not the cutoff, that's the average of the incoming class. Because as we mentioned already, we're not just looking at your grades, we're looking at all of those other factors. So it could be a student with a 95% average doesn't get into their first choice program, but a student with a 92% might get into their first choice program because of all of those other factors that we're looking at. So it really can have an impact on your overall application.
Great. Our next question is from Alex. If I'm interested in applying through early admissions, would I show uploads of my unofficial transcripts of my English, chemistry, physics, and math grades from grade 11?
So when you apply for early consideration, which would happen kind of in November, December of this coming year, yes, you would upload your transcripts to date, which would show your grade 11 results and the courses that you're registered in for grade 12. When we're making early decisions, what can happen is you could be given an early offer on the basis of your grade 11 performance, or we may choose to hold your application over to our regular consideration so you can be compared with other students. And that may be because we want to have some more information about your grade 12 performance, or just based on the group to that point, we might just want to see where you fit within the overall cohort.
Great. And here's another interesting question, Helen. Do you get a greater chance of being admitted to ECE if you list computer engineering as first choice and electrical as second choice, for example?
So what I would encourage you to do really is, if you're applying for ECE, probably just to list one of those programs on your profile. I mean, if that's the only program you're interested in, then certainly you can use 2 choices to list ECE. I would say pick the one that you're honestly interested in first as your first choice. And that's your best bet. There's not really a strategy in terms of ranking your choices in that regard.
And just a clarity, and I don't know if I said this in my presentation, but you get up to 4 choices. So you can rank up to 4 programs of choice that you might be interested in. So the next question, that's a very good question, is if students apply early, how will we see their grade 12 results?
Right. So if you apply early, again, assuming here for a moment that you're not an Ontario high school student, that you're from out of province or overseas, we may consider you based purely on your grade 11 marks, depending on what the grading system is for your school, your country. If we don't make an early decision, we may ask you to upload an up-to-date report card that shows your grades to date. And then ultimately, if you are admitted purely based on grade 11 results, before you can register in the faculty, you would be asked to provide a final transcript so that we can confirm that your grades have been consistent.
Great. And then Helen, another question about summer school is if a student takes it in grade 11, how would we weigh that in the application?
Yeah, I mean, again, as with everything else, if it is an unusually high mark as compared with the rest of your grades, it may be that we would look more closely at your performance in those other grades. But otherwise, if your mark is consistent with your performance in your regular school program, it would just get factored into your average as normal.
Great. And then another one that we had was a student was wondering is, can offers get rescinded?
That's a very good question. So the vast majority of our students keep their offers, but we do reserve the right to withdraw your offer if you don't meet the condition outlined in your application. So the vast majority of our decisions are made based on either a combination of grade 11 and grade 12 or based on grade 12 midterms. And so we will give you a final mark that you need to achieve in order to register in the faculty. And so you provide your final transcripts to us in the summer. Like I say, the vast majority of students meet their conditions. The conditions do allow you to fall a fair bit. And in cases where a student didn't meet their condition and there were special circumstances, of course, we would always review that information with them before making any decision. But the vast majority of students, it's just not a concern.
Another question we have, it's pretty specific, Helen, is do you accept Cambridge certifications?
I'm wondering here if this is regards specifically to English facility.
They put specific CAE or CPE. We can get them to email us.
Yeah, maybe reach out to us directly. If it is with regards to English language, I believe Tyler has already provided the link to our English language requirements, so you could follow there. If it's something else, certainly reach out to us by email and we can get that answer for you.
Perfect. So the next question is, the student gives an example. If they went from an 88 in grade 11 to a 95 in grade 12 in one of their courses, would we deem that as inconsistent?
I mean, again, in the course of your entire academic record, if you only had, ultimately your average will be your average based on the grades that you have provided us. We will calculate an average. When the committee is looking at your grades, if that 95 maybe stands out significantly from the rest of the pack, it may be a minor factor in our decision. We're not going to adjust the grade in any way and say, actually, that was an 88. We would just use that information as part of our broad-based review. But I mean, honestly, yes, an 88 to a 95 is a pretty common thing to see in some courses. But if it's in line with not just that particular course, but with all of your subjects.
Absolutely. And it also, one thing to take into consideration is it depends on what program you're applying to, how competitive it might be. Are we having to get that granular with specific courses? So that's one of those questions that where we wish we even had a crystal clear ball where we could tell you exactly. So it really just is a case by case basis. And then kind of this is a good segue. A student's asking, are we actually only looking, and this I believe this is an Ontario student, are we only looking at top 6 courses in grade 11 and grade 12 for their averages?
So when we calculate your average, we're actually using the 5 prerequisite subjects. So other programs will use your top 6 courses, but we look specifically at your prerequisite courses when calculating your average. That 6th course may come into consideration for scholarship consideration, but for the most part, we would be looking at the 5.
Great. This is another great question. Will there be a practice question or some way to practice for the personal profile questions?
Absolutely. So as soon as you apply, you'll get access to the personal profile where you can run through the practice questions as many times as you like before you're ready to proceed. Another thing we sometimes recommend is just kind of Google standard interview questions and things like that. Not that they're necessarily going to be the same, but just to get yourself a little bit more comfortable with the idea of answering questions live, if it's something that you're a little bit nervous about.
Absolutely. So next question is great. It's so students asking if they choose the track 1 path, do we get every engineering course possible, or do we have to choose which engineering we are most interested in? So basically, what happens in your first year of the track 1 program, most of the courses that you're going to be taking are going to be in line with the computer and electrical engineering program, actually. But for the most part, we're going to try to expose you to all of our engineering programs, and you'll take one specific course where that will actually walk you through and invite every department to that class to really talk about their programs as well, to really help you make an informed decision in year 2 on which program you might want to focus your last 3 years of study on. So I hope that answered your question. Also, just a quick note, all engineering students, your first year courses are pre-selected for you. So you don't have electives in year 1. And I will link our website because we actually showcase what courses a typical engineering program might look like for your fall and winter term. So back to more admissions questions. I'm at an IB school that grade 11 Ontario credits were taken in grade 10. Will those grades be looked at, or only the grade 11 and early grade 12 marks?
So if you took your grade 11 credits in grade 10, they will count as grade 11 credits, and those will be the basis of any early decisions, or when we're looking at your grade 11 marks, we will look to the grade 10 grade 10 year grade 11 subjects.
Absolutely. So next question is it possible to transfer into engineering from a program like life sciences or health sciences?
So technically it is possible, and we have a number of students who transfer in every year. Something to note, however, is that students coming in from a science program are typically coming into first year. So it will still take you 4 years to graduate, although you may get credit for math or some basic science courses. If you're not sure whether you want to do engineering or a science-focused program, what I would always say is that it is easier to make that transition, and this is likely true at any school that you'd be looking at. It's easier to make the transition from an engineering program into a science program than the reverse, only because the credits tend to be more transferable from engineering to sciences. But certainly if you're already in a science program, it is possible to apply, and we would base our decision on your university and high school courses.
Great. So the next one is, do your admission requirements differ based on if you chose Eng Sci versus the Core 8 programs?
So engineering science is our most competitive program, but the requirements themselves remain the same. So the courses themselves are the same. Typically engineering science, it is more competitive to gain admission.
But again, you know, a reminder that, you know, you can still rank up to 4 engineering programs. So you might not get into engineering science, but you still have the opportunity to consider it for 3 other programs as well. So a great question here from Adam is it a good idea to take all 3 math courses in grade 12, the data management, calculus, and the advanced functions?
So as you likely know, that only the calculus and the advanced functions are required. So that 6th course is really up to you, or if you're taking more than 6, it's up to you. There may be courses where it might later in your program where it might help you to have taken that data management course, but there's you know, if you're deciding between subjects, I'd really say pick the one that interests you the most, because it won't be a deciding factor for us.
Great. I realize we're also coming to time. I guess the time goes very fast when we're having fun, Helen. We've answered many questions and many more to go. For those of you that we didn't get your questions to, I'm just browsing to see if there was anything else that might be very unique. I do see a lot of the questions were quite repetitive. Again, if we didn't get to your question, I do apologize. The time went very quickly, but I do encourage you to email us at engineering@utoronto.ca, and we're happy to set up a meeting with you if you want to chat with a recruiter or answer one of your questions as well. Helen, maybe as the Director of Admissions, do you have any last thoughts for especially our grade 11 students that, you know, in a few months they'll be maybe considering picking their grade 12 courses, and in the fall they will be applying?
I mean, the one thing I would say, you know, you're still in, you know, fairly early in your grade 11 year. You still have time to get involved if you stepped back because of the pandemic, to make sure you're getting involved, because that will be a huge part of our decision making. And again, to take the courses, you know, obviously you have to take your prerequisite courses, but do things that interest you. If you can do the things that you're most interested in, it's amazing how much things will come together, rather than just trying to chase the idea of what would look best on my engineering application. That isn't to say, of course, that you don't need to be serious about your studies and get involved. But don't join a robotics team if you'd rather join a dance program, because we're not looking for any one specific thing. We're looking for you to demonstrate who you are and what strengths you'll bring to our program.
Absolutely, and we recognize that maybe the virtual setting isn't the ideal way of getting involved too, right? But unfortunately, we've all had to try to pivot and adapt to our new ways, just like we are here today. Of course, we'd love to be in person, but that is a great tip, Helen. And again, to our audience, thank you for taking this time out of your evening to be here. And we really, truly hope that this was beneficial for you. And again, please feel free to reach out if we didn't get to your question and you'd like your question answered. And hopefully we'll see you at a later session when you're applying as well. Take care. Bye for now.
Good evening.